There are men who are born to be legends, and then there are men who become legends precisely because they refuse to be broken. Jason Mamoa is one of those rare souls. The world knows him as Aquaman, the king of the seas, who commands armies and conquers oceans. They know him as Khal Drogo, the fearsome warlord whose very gaze made entire kingdoms tremble. They know him as a 6'5" wall of muscle and charisma, who has graced the covers of every major magazine on the planet. But behind that glory lies a story, not glamorous, but brutal, devastating, and deeply human. Behind the legend stands a boy, abandoned by his father. A young man nearly sliced apart in a Hollywood alley. A husband who watched his greatest love story crumble after 16 years. An actor who sat in near poverty while the world cheered his name. And a body beaten raw by a career built on his own 2 fists. And now, at 45, with new battles on the horizon. The question is no longer how far Jason Mamoa has come. The question is how much more this man can carry. If Jason Mamoa has ever moved you, ever made you believe that broken people can become something extraordinary, hit like as a tribute to every soul who has ever had to fight just to survive. It is heartbreaking when the beginning of a legend is marked not by warmth and safety, but by absence and displacement. Joseph Jason Namaka Mamoa entered this world on August 1st, 1979, in Honolulu, Hawaii, a paradise island that smelled of sea salt and plumeriia, where the waves rolled in like ancient songs and the mountains touched the clouds. His father, Joseph Mamoa, was a native Hawaiian painter. His mother, Coney Lama, was a photographer of German, Irish, and Ponyie descent. 2 artists, 2 worlds, and almost immediately, a separation that would leave a mark no paintbrush or camera could capture. When Jason was barely 6 months old, his parents divorced. His mother packed their lives into whatever could be carried and moved them to Norwok, Iowa, a small landlocked town as different from Hawaii as the earth is from the ocean. There were no waves in Norwok, no trade winds, no turquoise water stretching endlessly to the horizon. There was flat ground, gray winters, and the particular loneliness of being different in a place that had never seen anything quite like you. Jason grew up tall, dark, and visibly mixed race in a community where such things were noticed, where children can be quietly, persistently cruel. Poverty was not the defining word of his childhood, but belonging was. He was the boy without his father, the boy who looked like no one else in his classroom, the boy who flew between 2 worlds and felt fully at home in neither. His mother worked hard. She carried the weight of raising a son alone in a quiet Midwestern town, doing her best to give him roots in a place that felt foreign to both of them. She photographed life, while her own life demanded a kind of stoic endurance that children observe without understanding. The wound that cuts deepest is the one left by people who are supposed to love you. For Jason, that wound came early and took the shape of his father's absence. Growing up without Joseph Mamoa meant growing up with a ghost. Not the terrifying kind, the quiet kind. The kind that appears in other fathers at school events. In the way some boys walked with a certain confidence that only comes from being claimed, being chosen, being seen by the man whose blood runs in your veins. He would later admit, "I always felt like I had something to prove. Like I had to be bigger, louder, more visible, just to feel real." There were moments in school when other children, with the careless cruelty particular to youth, reminded him that he was different, that his name was strange, that his face did not fit the images on television, in magazines, in the story of what America was supposed to look like. He filed those moments away, not with bitterness, but with a slow, gathering fire. His mother saw the fire. She did not try to extinguish it. Instead, when Jason was in his early teens, she took him to Custer State Park in South Dakota, to the place called the Needles, where ancient granite spires rise from the earth like the fingers of giants. She watched her boy look up at those impossible heights and reach for them. Rock climbing became his salvation. The wall did not care about his name or his bloodline or his missing father. The wall only asked if he was strong enough, and he always was. Those moments of silent, vertical struggle became scripture. From that day forward, Jason Mamoa would never stop climbing. It is haunting to think how wide the gap was between the dream of becoming someone and the daily reality of being no one. After high school, Jason moved back to Hawaii, reconnecting with the land of his birth and enrolling at the University of Hawaii. He needed money. He found work wherever he could. He folded shirts in a surf shop, his fingers moving mechanically through stacks of fabric, while tourists browsed and the ocean glittered outside the window. Indifferent to his ambitions, he waited tables. He hauled himself through the unglamorous machinery of survival, while the dream of something more hummed quietly in the background. Then came the moment that changes everything. A Japanese fashion designer named Takeo Kobayashi noticed a 19-year-old Jason Mamoa and saw something the rest of the world had not yet recognized. He encouraged Jason to model. Within a year, Jason had won Hawaii's Model of the Year and walked the runway for Louis Vuitton. And then, impossibly, he learned that the television series Baywatch Hawaii was holding open auditions. He walked in among 1,300 hopefuls. He walked out with the lead role. I was 19 and folding t-shirts in a surf shop, he would later say. And I got chosen out of 1,300 people to play a leading role. I did not even know how to act. He laughed when he told that story. But behind the laughter was a boy who had just watched his whole improbable life pivot on a single audition. I was born tonight. He whispered through tears when the call came. And perhaps he was. Then came the years that nearly undid everything. Baywatch Hawaii ended in 2001. Jason traveled the world, searching for something he could not name. He returned to Los Angeles with nothing but his body, his name, and an industry that had already labeled him Baywatch Pretty Boy and moved on. He spent 5 years unable to find a single agent willing to represent him seriously. 5 years of auditions that led nowhere. 5 years of living in the shadow of a role that had made him visible, but not credible. For those years, days blurred into nights. He took whatever roles came, small parts, supporting characters, guest appearances in shows that canceled before their seasons ended. He moved through cheap apartments and cheaper meals. He once described the feeling of that period as wearing a costume that did not fit, of being all the wrong sizes for all the right rooms. He was close to surrendering when the call came for Stargate Atlantis in 2005. A recurring role as the warrior Ronon Dex. Not a lead, not a hero, but a lifeline. He took it with both hands. Had I missed that call, the story might have ended in silence. He confessed years later, his voice carrying the weight of a man who knew exactly how close the edge had been. By 2011, the world finally began to see what Jason Mamoa had always known was inside him. He was cast as Khal Drogo In Game of Thrones, the savage, majestic Dothraki warlord who rode across the steppes of Essos like a force of nature to win the role. He performed the haka, the traditional war dance of the Maori people, in front of the casting directors. The room went silent. Then it erupted. The same casting director was looking for someone to play Conan the Barbarian. 4 weeks after being cast as Khal Drogo, Jason was in Bulgaria, filming Conan. 2 iconic warrior roles in a single month. The world that had once turned its back on him was now scrambling to keep up. Then came the role that would define a generation. Arthur Curry, Aquaman, the King of Atlantis. The Aquaman film, released in 2018, earned over $1.1 billion at the global box office, making it the highest-grossing DC film in history at that time. Jason Mamoa, the boy who folded shirts in a surf shop, was now the face of a billion-dollar franchise. Yet, the price was steep. His body staggered under the demands of a career built on physical punishment. His mind teetered under pressures the public rarely sees. And life, which had been generous, was preparing to remind him that generosity always comes with a cost. It is often said that violence leaves no permanent mark on a man of strength. But for Jason Mamoa, one night in November of 2008 left a mark so visible that it became part of his identity. He was at a bar in Hollywood called Bird's Cafe when another man attacked him without warning, slashing a broken beer glass across his face. The cut was devastating. He required 140 stitches. He underwent reconstructive surgery on his face. The man who attacked him, Dominic Bundo, was eventually convicted and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Jason did not speak publicly about the attack for a long time. He carried it quietly. He thought, perhaps, that the scar would end his career before it truly began. That no one would want to see a face marked by violence on their screens. He was wrong. The scar across his left eyebrow became something else entirely. Some people carry pain like a badge. He would later say, I carry it quietly, and it became my face. He thought that scar was the final blow, but life had not finished with him. Then, the news that Hollywood could not quite believe. After Game of Thrones ended his character's arc at the conclusion of its first season, Jason found himself in freefall. Khal Drogo died too early. The phone stopped ringing. The auditions dried up. He was once again the man the industry had forgotten. But this time it was worse. Because now, there were children, his daughter Lola and his son Nakoa Wolf. Both born during his years with Lisa Bonet, needed to be fed and cared for and given a life. And Jason Mamoa, the man the world called a warrior, was quietly drowning in debt. He has spoken about those years with a rawness that is almost uncomfortable to witness. My family was surrounded by debt, he admitted. I had 2 little kids and a woman I loved, and I was trying to hold everything together with nothing in my hands. It was as if grief had a blueprint, returning to etch the same wounds each time he thought he had healed. The wandering years of his youth had returned in a new form, not poverty of food or shelter, but poverty of opportunity, of visibility, of hope. He built a plan as relentless as hunger itself. He pursued every audition. He said yes to every project that would have him. He directed his own film, Road to Paloma, in 2014, pouring his frustration and his passion into a story he co-wrote and controlled himself. He refused to disappear. The turning point came in 2014 when he was cast as Aquaman. Had I not made that film myself? Had I not kept pushing when everything said, stop, none of what came after would have existed, he said. That role saved not just my career, it saved my family. Then came the loss, that no Oscar, no box office record, no billion-dollar franchise could cushion. In January of 2022, Jason Mamoa and Lisa Bonet announced their separation after 16 years together and 5 years of marriage. The news hit the internet like a wave hitting stone. Lisa Bonet had been Jason's dream long before she was his reality. He has spoken openly about falling in love with her image on television when he was just 8 years old. She was already a star when he was a child in Iowa, staring at a screen and feeling something that he could not yet name. When they finally came together as adults, it felt to the world like destiny fulfilled. They had 2 children. They had years of shared life. They were, to everyone who watched them, proof that the fairy tale could be real. With Lisa, he found not glamour or convenience, but something he had been searching for since that landlocked Iowa childhood, a sense of being fully seen. She did not need him to be Aquaman or Khal Drogo. She knew the man underneath the armor. He did not move for a long time when it ended. The man who had faced bar attacks and studio rejections and the slow suffocation of debt simply stood there, hollowed out by the particular grief of losing a love that had felt like home. Some things break you in ways that leave no visible scar, he said quietly to a reporter who asked how he was doing. And yet, the children were still there, Lola and Nakoa Wolf. The reasons he had fought through all of it. The loss of his marriage did not diminish his love for his children. If anything, it deepened it. Now, at 45, Jason Mamoa stands as something that cannot be manufactured or packaged or reduced to a single role or headline. He is a man who has been slashed open and stitched back together, in body and in spirit, more times than anyone who watches his films will ever know. He has a net worth estimated at around $25 million. He owns properties in Los Angeles and Hawaii. He has his production company, Pride of Gypsies, which continues to develop projects that reflect his vision and his values. He has been named an advocate for life below water by the United Nations Environment Program. He founded Honolulu, a company that packages water in aluminum cans and fights plastic pollution in the oceans. He protested the construction of a telescope on Mauna Kea because the mountain is sacred to native Hawaiian people. Yet what defines him is not what he owns. It is what he gives. His children call him Dad. His communities call him a protector, and he answers to all of it. Still climbing, still fighting, still carrying the weight of everything that tried to destroy him. Applause fades. Trophies gather dust. He once said, "But the people you protect, the land you fight for, the children you raise, these endure." From a surf shop in Honolulu to the throne of Atlantis, from a lonely Iowa childhood to the stages of the world, from 140 stitches and a reconstructed face to a scar that became his signature, from debt and silence to a billion-dollar legacy built on nothing but refusal to quit. This is the life of Jason Mamoa. His life teaches us that the marks we carry are not evidence of our failure. They are evidence that we survived, that we stood up, that we kept climbing, even when the walls seemed to have no top. If this story has touched your heart, leave a tribute below. And wherever life finds you tonight, may you find the courage to carry your own scars with something like grace. May the people who were meant to see you find you. May the walls you climb lead somewhere worth reaching. And may you know, even in your hardest hours, that the most legendary lives are never the ones without wounds. They are the ones that kept going anyway.